Hey Cisco Techies, what's up? My name is Amit and welcome to Train Collab. Today, together we are going to implement the Cisco's Webex Hybrid Calendar Service integrations. Yes, you're right. We are going to see together and configure together the Exchange server. We are going to configure the Webex Control Hub. We are going to configure the Expressway C calendar connector, as well as we are going to see how does the Exchange web services look like, what are the PowerShell commands, what are the outputs that we can see with the help of the PowerShell commands, and a lot of other things, a bit of troubleshooting as well. So make sure that you watch the first 10 minutes of the video, which is the crux of the video that tells about what this hybrid calendar service is and what are the prerequisites and how should we go ahead with the configuration part of it, the preparation part, which is very, very important. So if you watch these first 10 minutes, understand everything what we are talking, then I'm 100% sure that you'll be understanding the rest of the video as well and be prepared to implement this Cisco's Webex Hybrid Calendar Service in your environments. And I'm sure you know what this Webex Hybrid Calendar Service is used for. Of course, it's used for Cisco's powerful Webex meetings for the video conferencing, So if you want to use your Outlook for scheduling the meeting, or if you want to use your video devices to schedule a meeting, or if you want to use the one button to push feature on your video devices, or to schedule the meeting directly from your Webex app. So I'm sure that you're going to like this video. If yes, give it a thumbs up, share it with your colleagues, and let's get quickly started right now. Yes. All right, so this is the architecture for the Webex hybrid service, for the calendaring service, wherein you see that there is just a Microsoft Exchange server, and then it connects to the Expressway C, where the Cisco calendar connector is installed, and the Expressway C communicates to the Microsoft Exchange via the Exchange Web Services API. That's it. It's just the HTTPS connection between the two servers, on-prem servers. So this Expressway C has to be installed inside your network and not in the DMZ. Okay, it's an internal server. It doesn't need any internal ports to be opened. It's fully secure. It's using either HTTPS or the secure WebSocket. So make sure that you install your Expressway C inside your organization and not in the DMZ. And then there is just one outgoing connection to the Webex Cloud, Cisco Webex Cloud, which is HTTPS, and it just uses a REST API to communicate with the Webex Control Hub or to the Cisco Webex data center. Okay, so what are the requirements of the hybrid calendar service? So these are some of the prerequisites. So all of the prerequisites that is needed to get your hybrid calendar service up and running. So the first thing that you need is the Cisco Webex. Of course, you need a Cisco Webex subscription, else you will not be able to configure this thing on a free service. Then you need the Cisco Expressway software. So you need to install the virtual machine with the latest software release. That's the recommended software version. So maybe 12.5, 12.6, 12.7 Cisco Expressway software version, so that you get the updated version of the connector software. Okay, so it doesn't need any license. So there is no need of any license. The software is free of cost. You can install it and it will be up and running. The other thing is Microsoft Exchange on-prem version 2013 or 2016 or 2019. Remember, we are talking about on-prem Exchange integration with the hybrid calendar service, and that's why I am only talking about the Microsoft Exchange on-prem requirement. Else it works with Google, it works with Office 365, and this Cisco Webex meetings is optional if you want to have at Webex or at Meet or Meet at Meet, colon space or at Webex colon space kind of things for the users so that they can schedule such meetings. In that case, you need Cisco Webex meetings. And the port requirements, these are the only two port requirements. The first one is the outgoing connection. So outgoing HTTPS or secure WebSocket connection over the port 443. So from your Expressway to these FQDN. So anything.rackcdn.com or anything.ciscospark.com, anything.wbx2.com, anything.webex.com and anything.clouddrive.com. So it's only over the port 443, so outgoing connection from your Expressway to the Webex cloud. Okay, that's the only port that needs to be open, and I think it's usually open for the rest of the clients in your company, and it's not a problem. If you are using a proxy, it's also not a problem. Maybe you just need to enter the proxy details somewhere during the configuration. That's it, and you need to allow this on the proxy then or the port 443. And the other requirement is the connection that goes out from the Expressway C to the exchange on the port 443. If you want to keep it secure, then use a TLS. That means you need to exchange the certificates between Expressway and exchange. If it's an internal server, you can also run it on TCP port 80. That's a non-secure port. It's your choice. If you think your internal environment is secure, you can use port 80, else use port 443. It's also okay. It's an HTTPS connection that happens between the Exchange web service that's running on your Exchange server. Okay, make sure the authentication on the Exchange web service is configured properly. We will check some of the troubleshooting things. Do not leave this video right now, because we are going to have some more important and interesting topics coming in going further. Okay, so these are only the requirements for the hybrid calendar service. We have seen the architecture, we have seen the requirements. Let's go ahead and see how does the provisioning process happen. Okay, so in this provisioning process, that means to provision the Webex hybrid calendar service, these are the 4 entities which are involved during the process. So you need an administrator, and this administrator should have the full admin access on the Webex Control Hub. Okay, so whoever is configuring the Webex hybrid calendar service needs to be a full admin. All right, and then of course you need a Webex Control Hub, and then you will need the virtual machine installed. So calendar connector would be installed afterwards, but you need to have the virtual machine already installed. The version should be the latest one. There is no need of a license. You can go ahead and just skip the option key setup after the installation process of the Expressway. Okay, or you can just choose calendar service, and that's all. No license would be asked after the installation. And then of course you need the connection details for the Active Directory / Exchange server. So what's the first step that happens? The first step is that the administrator logs in to the Webex Control Hub during the provisioning process. Once he has logged in, he will go on to the hybrid calendar service under the service sections on the left side of the Webex Control Hub, and then he will choose the hybrid calendar service. And once he chooses, he will put in some more details inside that configuration, and then from the Webex Control Hub he would be redirected to the Expressway page. So make sure that whenever you access the Webex Control Hub, that you also have access to the Expressway from the same laptop. That means better that you are in the internal network so that you can access your Expressway server web page. So once you log in to the Expressway server, after the redirection, you will be automatically presented with the connector management page. All right, and there you'll have the option to say, hey, I would like Cisco to manage the CA certificates from the Webex Control Hub, because it's a it's the 443 connection. That means it's an HTTPS connection between the Expressway and the Webex Control Hub. That means both the entities need to exchange the certificates, especially I would say the server certificate needs to be uploaded on the Expressway so that the Expressway can trust the server certificate, else your connection will not work. So this process can be done automatically by choosing the option let Cisco manage the CA certificate, or it can be done manually. Then you have to go to the documentation part, check which are the certificates, CA certificates. So by the server certificate, I meant the CA that signed the Webex Control Hub Services server certificates. Okay, so it could be GoDaddy, it could be Verizon, or I don't know, some other CAs that's publicly available. Okay, so once you check, let Cisco manage this CA certificates. So during this process, Cisco will automatically upload these certificates under the CA certificate inside the Expressway. Okay, once these certificates are updated, the next thing is the option to register your Expressway with the Webex Control Hub. This option is available first inside the Expressway so that it's a secure connection. So you send a request to the Webex Control Hub to please register myself. So that's an outgoing connection from the Expressway to the Webex Control Hub. And that's how Webex Control Hub will know, hey, that's the FQDN. And this is the FQDN that I find under this organization's name. And okay, I will accept this request to register this Expressway on this Webex Control Hub organization ID. Okay, once you click on register request, the next thing that's going to happen is you will come back to the Webex Control Hub page, and on this Webex Control Hub page you will be presented with a list of Expressway clusters that you have configured, and then from there you can choose, maybe it's just one, so you'll be just presented with one Expressway cluster name. So you can select that resource name or the cluster name, and you say, hey, I am now allowing Expressway to register. So that's a secure connection. You know, you are sending a request and then you are going on to the control hub and then accepting that request as well. Okay, and saying, hey, allow my Expressway to register. So that's totally secure connection again. Once the Expressway registers, you will see that the management connector will be up and running under the status of Expressway Calendar Connector Service. Once it's done, it will automatically load and install the connector. Who will load and install the connector? The Expressway C will load and install the connector on the Expressway C server. Okay, that's the connector that's being used to send the requests to the exchange, to generate meeting requests, to understand the participants, to update the meeting details, and a lot of things, you know. So that's the connectors part during this for why is it needed? What's the whole idea behind installing this connector? Okay. So once this is done, then you will go ahead and configure this connector. So once you configure, like you configure a software or you configure a virtual machine, then you will put in the network details, system name, host name, DNS, NTP server, and all these things, right? In the same way, when you install this connector, you'll have to then go ahead and configure this connector. And during this configuration, you will need the impersonation account credentials. You will need, I will tell you what this impersonation credential is. Basically, it's a delegation account which can work on behalf of the organization user. Okay, so that's the impersonation credential that you will need. That's the account you would need before. Then it will do an auto discover. It will discover the test email and see if the connection to your Exchange server is okay or not. That's why you will do all this configuration here. We will see this configuration in a couple of minutes. And then the next step would be that the Expressway will send the EWS request, Exchange Web Services request, by configuring an endpoint URL. So basically an endpoint URL is nothing but a URL with a request, like a post or a get request kind of thing. It will send this to the test email inside the EWS service, and then it will, if it gets a response back from the Exchange and saying, hey, the credential is okay, impersonation account credentials are okay, you can connect with me, everything's fine, then your configuration will automatically be saved. Once this configuration is saved on the Expressway, after a couple of minutes, you will see that the calendar connector service is running. So sorry, before that you'll have to go ahead and activate this service as well, calendar connector under it would be still in the Expressway C configuration. You'll have to go ahead and activate this service. Okay, we'll see that how do we activate this service as well. Once that's done, after a few minutes, you will see that yeah, the management connector and the calendar connector services are running. Everything's fine. Then you will go ahead onto the Webex Control Hub and you will enable the hybrid calendar service for each of the users in your organization. So we will see all these steps, whatever flow I have discussed right now, you will be seeing all these things in a few minutes. So don't go anywhere. Let's get started with the next thing. But before we start, there is some small thing that I wanted to discuss. So what is this Exchange Web Service operation? So once you remember, I said that Expressway performs some operations, or the calendar connector performs some operations on the Exchange Web Service, like getting the user details, getting the meeting details, or getting the updates, or generating the meeting details when you have at Webex in the location field of the email and all sorts of things. So these things are done by the calendar connector using this Exchange Web Service operations or /APIs. So these are the APIs that the calendar connector uses to send the request and to receive the information. So for example, convert ID, it just uses this API for simple connectivity check. That means it will prepare a URL, a request based on this convert ID, and then convert ID operation, and then it will receive a response either in an XML form or in a JSON format or some other language. And then find item, for example, it would like to search for events in a user's calendar. Get folder to retrieve the details about a calendar folder. So these are some of the things that it does. So this is the list of all the operation that the calendar connector performs together with the Exchange Web Service. Okay, and this is one of the example of the operation, one of the XML request format that the calendar connector sends to the Exchange Web Service. So this Exchange Web Service is a service actually that's running inside the Exchange server. So if you go to IIS information services, internet information services on your Exchange server, and you go under default site, you will see that there is a service called as EWS running. Okay, so this is one of the API requests that the calendar connector sends to your Exchange Web Service to get the connectivity response. Hey, if everything's fine or not, checks the mailbox of the user, for example, user1@example.com that you see here. So the very first important thing for the hybrid calendar service integration is that you need to have a service account, because with the help of this service account, the hybrid calendar service will always authenticate with the directory controller and the Active Directory service and the Exchange. So that's very important that you have a service account, and this service account should be email enabled. That means it should have a mailbox as well. And then the next step, what we are going to do now, is to create an impersonation account for that user. So how do you configure this impersonation account is you have to open this Exchange management shell. So I'm in the Exchange management shell, and then the command is new management role assignment. I'm just hitting tab after writing the keyword and it just completes. That's better. And then I'm just assigning the name to this role assignment. So I will say calendar connector ACCT. So basically when you do get management role assignment, then you will see this name calendar connector ACCT. We are gonna see it shortly as well. And then what's the role that you're gonna assign to this service account? So I'm gonna assign this application impersonation role. That's very important that this service account has this application impersonation role. So I'm gonna put some link in my description of the video so that you guys can read what this application impersonation role is. You know, so basically it's like acting on someone's behalf, you know. So it's like a delegation, you know, to something, to a mailbox, a delegated mailbox. And then I'm gonna assign a user. So in this case, I'm gonna have this user which has a service account, and then this user also has a mailbox. Shortly we are gonna see how can you see via the exchange command shell if this user has a mailbox or not. So after this, just hit enter, and there you go. You see that the user account is created. Now let's go quickly and say get minus management role assignment, and then I'm just gonna say calendar connector ACCT asterisk, find all the roles. Oh, I typed it wrong, I think. Connector, there you go. It finds it here and it says this is the name of the role assignment that you did, calendar connector ACCT, and the role that you assigned was application impersonation role. And to whom was this assigned to? It was assigned to the service account with the name hybrid calendar, and then the assignee type is, yeah, it's a user. So that's how it is. The next step now is to configure something called as the throttling policy. And by the way, sorry, let's go ahead and see quickly how can you check if this user has a mailbox or not. So for that, we will just enter the command get minus mailbox, and I think if I just put in the username, which is h calendar, should be able to tell me. Oh, sorry, get mailbox h calendar, and there you see that this user hybrid calendar has a mailbox and the send quota is unlimited. Okay, so that's how you can check if the user has a mailbox or not. Let's try to create a mailbox for one of the users and see if that helps. So let's take a look at a user called as John Doe, J Doe. So I will say get minus mailbox J Doe. Usually should not have a mailbox. As you see, he isn't having any mailbox. So let's go ahead and create a mailbox. So if you see in Microsoft Docs, this is the command to create or enable the mailbox. Enable mailbox identity user at domain and the database of the mailbox. All right, so we'll go into the Exchange Management Shell now. And then I will just, that's wrong. I will type in here then db19. And I hope it creates. There you go. You see, the service account now has a mailbox, John Doe. Okay, so that's how you create a mailbox. And then you know a service account needs to have a mailbox, and this service account needs to be having the impersonation account role. We have already seen that. Once it is done, and why is it needed, you also know that. So once it is done, the next step is to configure some throttling policy. So throttling policy is necessary so that you do not have a lot of loads and your hybrid calendar service works smoothly. You know, you do not have any issues with that. So I'll just go ahead and copy and paste from the deployment guide the throttling policy. Okay, I'm just copy and pasted it, so you'll get it in the deployment guide as well. And where in the deployment guide I can show you quickly. So I couldn't find it in the deployment guide. Maybe it's in the help.webex.com there, because I know I have been configuring it several times. I thought it would be in the deployment guide, but no. But for sure, it will be in the help.webex.com. I'm gonna paste that link to you guys, and also I'm gonna paste this throttling policy commands into the video descriptions. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit enter. It's trying to configure that, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and copy the other command for the throttling policy, which is, yeah, it won't work for me because it's already applied. I'm just gonna show you guys what those commands are, but it will always say that it already exists, and that's why yeah, I can't apply it again and again. All right, so let's go ahead and copy the other commands, and all right, so you see nothing has been modified because I have already configured it, but that's the second command for the throttling policy association. So first thing is to create the throttling policy. So in our case, for example, it's calendar connector policy, and then what we do is associate this throttling policy with the service account. So in our case, for example, H calendar, then there is another command, and this command will make sure that the throttling policy has been associated with the right user. So there you see, this is the username, hybrid calendar, and then the throttling policy ID. Okay, let's go ahead and do the hybrid calendar connector service configuration on the Webex Control Hub. As you can see, I'm logged into the Webex Control Hub, and then on the left side, I would go to services and then hybrid. I will click on hybrid exchange calendar. That's what I'm using. If you want to see the prerequisites, you can click on the prerequisites and you can check, plan your connector capability, dedicated or shared. And then if you want to deploy Expressway C, so if you have done this, it's really easy. Cisco has given such a nice documentation within it so that you can follow the steps and say, hey, these are the steps that I have already done, follow the requirements for the Expressway software, and then the minimum supported version for, I think it's now 12.5 or something, and then install the OVR file. How do you install the Expressway? And if you need more documentation, and you can click on the open documentation link, and then it will take you to that documentation link wherein you can follow the further steps and do the implementation. So it's really wonderful. I would say I would really appreciate the efforts of the guys who have done it, and then bypass the first time setup wizard, configure the Expressway C, and then you need to open the port 443 on your firewall outbound from the Expressway C to these domains. Cisco tells that as well. So you need to open the firewall for these two domains. So asterisk.wbx2.com and then asterisk.webex.com. So all right, I'll click on setup, and then I will say, it says that, okay, you are about to do a hybrid calendar service setup, and I will say, yes, I have read all the prerequisites, and then it will ask me for the Expressway hostname. So I will add in here my Expressway hostname, and make sure that from the laptop or PC, from wherever network you are connecting, your Expressway is reachable, because when you do a next step, it will redirect you to the Expressway page. So that's why be in the same network and be in this, let your laptop access the Expressway. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until you have access to the Expressway. Click on next. And for the display name, I will say H cluster, for example, hybrid cluster, and I'll click on next. It's just the display name. It has just to make sure you are differentiating between two different clusters when running on the same Control Hub. Okay, then it will take you to the Expressway now if you click on next. Okay, browser problem. I'll take another browser. All right, so as I had the browser problem, as I said, maybe you have some network issues and you're not able to reach your Expressway directly from your laptop. You have to go to that network again. And how do you access that same step again? So what I'll do is I'll click on again hybrid, and then here you will see that a hybrid calendar is setup not completed. So what I'll do is I'll do edit settings, and then I'll click on resources. I'll click on this edge cluster that we configured, and then it says go to Expressway. So I'll say go to Expressway, advanced, and then proceed. And now you are shown the Expressway C login page, So I hope that's the password. And there you go. You will be directly redirected to this connector management page, and you do not need any license for this on the Expressway C. It's free of cost. You do not need to enable any keys for it. You do not need any feature keys for this, so it's free of cost. Okay, and then when you are in the connector management page, you can say, okay, I want Cisco to manage the Expressway CA certificates required for this trust. That means this way Cisco is uploading the needed public CA certificates on the Expressway C securely. Or the other way is that you can manually upload the needed or required certificates from the Webex, but there are a list of certificates that Cisco says you have to upload. But I would suggest, if you can do this, if your organization allows, just do it automatically. Cisco will directly upload the certificates on the Expressway C. Else you have to go to maintenance, security, trusted CA, and then upload these CA certificates from the Webex one by one. Okay, click on update software and verify connection. Now it's an outgoing connection from the Expressway C to the Webex Control Hub using port 443. That's what Cisco said. You need to open a connection from your firewall to ***wbx2.com and ***wbx.com. So that's the test that's currently going on for the connector management. And there you go, the connection was successful. It was able to upload the certificate on the Expressway C. And now if you click on register, then it will redirect you to the Webex cloud again for the final confirmation. And yes, you see the latest connector software was automatically installed on the Expressway C. This is how you install the hybrid calendar connector software on the Expressway C. There is no other option that I know about, and if you see that it says all the prerequisites are met for this Expressway to be registered for the hybrid services. You don't need anything else. Okay, and then it says you are currently allowing the Webex cloud to add required CA certificates to the Expressway trust list. Okay, if you go here and see, so Webex has installed, for example, Quo Vadis CA root certificate, GoDaddy root certificate, the GoDaddy group root certificate. So he has added a couple of VeriSign root certificate, for example. So a lot of public root certificate that Cisco uses for Webex Control Hub are being automatically uploaded. Okay, and then we'll say register, and then you will be now taken back to your Webex Control Hub, and it will say allow access to the, so I will say allow access to the Expressway, and I'll click on continue, and then it says registration confirmed. And that's how now your Expressway C is securely registered with the Webex Control Hub, and it's just using port 443, nothing else, a secure SSL connection between the two different entities. Okay, as you see here, the calendar connector is now installing, and then the status changed to not configured, and the management connector is running successfully, and its version 8.11.1.0 and 8.11.1.1.0. And now we have to go ahead and do the calendar connector configuration on the Expressway C so that it can talk to your Exchange server. You remember we configured some impersonation account role users, so that's what we are going to configure now. And I'll say configure Microsoft Exchange server, okay, because we are using an on-prem server. So what we are going to do is click on new, because there is nothing currently, it's a fresh server. We are going to say, so this is the service account that we created, domain name slash username, and then the password. Display name could be anything, so in my case I will write hybrid calendar, and I will say on prem, and the type is Exchange on-prem or Office 365, but we use Exchange on-prem. And I will say yes, enable this Exchange server. I will let the NTLM and basic authentication both enabled, because I don't know what kind of authentication is supported on the other side, I mean on the Exchange side or the Active Directory side. So that's why I will leave both enabled. TLS verify mode for now, I will keep it off, or else what you have to do is get the Expressway C certificate signed, and then upload the CA certificate from the one who signed the CA Expressway C certificate on the Exchange server, and then the Exchange CA certificate you have to upload it on the Expressway C server for the TLS authentication to work, else it will not work. Okay, and then you'll have to put in the scheduling account email address. Just for the demo to work, I'm just using another scheduling account email address, but else you can use the same scheduling account email address that you have for your service account. It should be like this, but for my demo to work, I'm just using another scheduling account email address. And then make sure that your EWS authentication things are all okay, else you will be receiving a 401 unauthorized messages. Okay, so I'm just gonna say enable it, and then I'm just gonna put the Exchange IP address here. So as per the deployment guide, you should use the option use auto discover, and then you'll have to say here the Active Directory domain, for example this, and then Active Directory site is not mandatory, and then I will say query mode LDAP. So if you want to have a secure authentication, then you can say LDAP S, and then in the email address I will say an email here, and then I'm gonna say add. Okay, as you see now, the hybrid calendar on-prem Exchange server is now safe. That means it was successfully able to communicate with the Exchange server, and then able to authenticate and find the authentication URLs and connect to the Exchange web services properly. There was no problem, but sometimes you might get that there is a 401 authentication error. So what's the problem in that case? I'll try to demo that situation here. Let's see. All right, so as you see here, I have recreated the issue. And how did I recreate the issue, or what is my issue? Let's say now, let's see. So while I was doing this Microsoft Exchange configuration, and I just clicked on save, what it did was throw an error, said that the remote server returned an error 401 unauthorized, you know. And if we click on the test connection events, it shows that everything was right, but at the end, Exchange server error, the request failed, the Microsoft Exchange Web Services data returned an 401 unauthorized. That means the Exchange Web Services authentication settings has some problem, because your Expressway C is sending an authentication request, but the Exchange Web Services cannot authenticate this user, you know. So what you have to see, most of the time, which helped me to resolve this problem, was go to the Exchange web server, and then in the search bar just type in IIS, Internet Information Services Manager. Just open it, go to the sites, go to your default website, and open this EWS, Exchange Web Services. And in your Exchange Web Services, go to the IIS Manager permissions. Go to authentication. And in this authentication, you will see that Windows authentication is disabled and the basic authentication is disabled. And that's why you get a response 401 unauthorized. You know, so as I have this LDAP configured in the settings, as you saw in the Expressway, what I'll do is enable the Windows authentication. So now that's enabled. Let's get back to our Expressway C server, and then try to save it again. And this time the authentication should be successful. And there you go, your authentication was successful. Yeah. And then we'll go ahead and let's see again in the connector service, the overview looks okay. And then the next step would be to go ahead and configure the conferencing service, so the Cisco Webex meeting sites to which your Expressway C should communicate with, you know. So click on new, and then the FQDN name of your Webex site, you have to enter it here. And how do you find your Cisco Webex site? Just go to the Webex Control Hub, click on meeting, and there you will see your site name, you know. So just copy that site name, go to Expressway C, paste that, and then use the admin username and password, whatever it is. So that's Webex Control Hub admin, okay? Or you can leave it blank as well, I think. Just leave the username and password blank, and then click on test connection. It will just do a test connection, and it says that it says empty username. If you see an error, if it's an empty username, either you can put in a user who has a personal meeting room or an account on Webex Control Hub. That should work, but I was just trying to see if it is able to reach my FQDN or not for the Webex site, and it was, you know. So if I click on add, it will add itself. and there you see. So the Webex meeting site is now added on the Expressway C. So the last thing now what we have to do is enable the calendar connector. How do we do it? Is go to the application, hybrid services, and then calendar service, I think, or connector management. And then click on calendar connector. And then if you see the status is not enabled, so we have to enable it. And then I would say save. After this is done, we will see the status of both the management connector and the calendar connector. So if I go to hybrid services again, connector management, if you see here now, the management connector status is running and the calendar connector service is running. Voila. Now what we have to do is go into the Webex Control Hub and then enable this hybrid services for each user or the devices that are going to use this hybrid calendar service so that they can schedule their meetings, you know. So I'm gonna go ahead and enable the hybrid services for some of the users. So let's say I go to the users here and I choose this user called as Charles Holland. And what I have to do is click on calendar service. As you see, it's currently off. I will say activate the calendar service. Yes, Microsoft Exchange Office 365 / Office 365, sorry. And there you go, pending activation. So this will not be activated until this user Charles Holland has at least logged in once into his Webex app. Okay, so at least once the user has to log in so that the Webex Control Hub can see, hey, user is connecting. And you know, so I will log into one of the users. I'm logged in, and then I'll just look around, and yeah, as you see, the user is logged in. I'll go ahead and check if the user is active now or the hybrid service for this user is active. So I'll just go ahead again and see what's the status of the calendar service. It still says pending activation. Maybe it needs a while because it's a cloud service. So I'll check back once it's active. I'll show you guys once again. Until then, we can go ahead and activate this for another user, Anita Perez, and then I'll say calendar service, activate, and I'm just gonna use Microsoft Exchange Office 365, and I'm gonna say save. All right, and then we'll have to log in Anita as well, and once she's logged in, the account should be active as well. So the other place where you can check if the users are successfully activated or not is go to the Expressway C, hybrid services, calendar service, and then the calendar connector status. And in the calendar connector status, you see that there are 2 users being assigned for this subscription, and then successfully 2 users have been subscribed. So sometimes it takes a long time on the Control Hub to show if the users are being subscribed for this calendar connector service or not, but on the Expressway C you will see the status more fast, you know, so you could verify from here as well the status of the calendar connectors for those users. So in the same way, you would also enable the hybrid calendar service for the devices. So let's say you have some devices. If not, let's go ahead and add one of them. You know, I don't have one. Let's go ahead and add one. Click on workspaces under management on the left side of the Webex Control Hub panel. Click on add workspace. I will name this. So I will name this as C. Holland's DX80, Charles Holland's DX80. and I will say the best describes this workspace is a desk, because it's a DX80, and I'll say just one, because it's the personal device, and location I haven't created one, so I will just click on next. Yes, and it's a Webex Rooms device. I click on next, and yeah, calling is free calling, and then I'll say enable the calendar as well for this device. Click on next, and then I will add the email address of the user, then click on next. A meeting code has been an activation code has been generated for this device. So what you have to do is, when you have your Webex Room device connected, you will see an option coming up on your DX80 or whatever room device that you have to enter the 16-digit activation code, or you can just take this QR code in front of the cam of that device, and then you would be able to scan it as well. Either you can copy this information, so I'll go ahead and copy this information. All right, I have the 16-digit code. I'll go ahead and register my DX80, and I'll show it to you guys once we schedule a meeting and do a demo. Until then, let's go ahead and see what happened with Charles. Is he activated? If I click on Charles and calendar service, you see that this is activated. All right. So, well, we have successfully configured the hybrid calendar service. Until now, everything's green. Let's go ahead and do some demo. It's time for some demo now for the hybrid calendar service. All right. So once we have completed the hybrid calendar service configuration steps on the Webex Control Hub side, and also on the Expressway C side, and on the Exchange server side, the next thing that we are going to do is test the configuration that we did. We are going to test if the calendar service is working, if we are going to see if the one button to push is working or not. And in this demo, what I'm going to use is this Webex desk device that I have named it DX80. And make sure the room devices that you have, they have the resource mailboxes, because if you do not have them, then they will not be able to receive the meeting invitation, and hence they will not be able to join the meeting. So very important that these devices have the email address, the Exchange email address with the email box. Okay. All right. Once this email address is added, let's go ahead and create a normal meeting that we do, for example, in the Exchange on-prem. So open your Outlook. So here's my Outlook. I went into the calendar, today's date, and then I'm just gonna say new meeting. And in this new meeting, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna invite my colleague Anita. I'm just gonna invite my colleague Taylor Bot, and then in the subject line, I'm gonna mention it, the discussion what we are gonna have. So let's say return to work strategy and planning. All right. And in the location field, what I'm gonna have is nothing but the keyword at Webex : space. So the keyword in this location field is very important. This is gonna decide, if your one button to push will appear on your desk devices or not, if the Webex meeting will be created or not. So this keyword is very important, at Webex, or at Webex : space, or at Meet, or at Meet : space. So at Webex is okay, it creates a meeting, all right. But why is this : space? So this : space would create an additional space into the Webex app, so that people after the meeting can keep the discussion going. And what would be the name of that space? The name of the space is equal to the subject line, whatever you have written. Okay. And then what I'm going to do now is add the room. So I'm going to add my Webex room device, which is this, and I'm not going to update my location. I'm just going to say no. So that means the location still remains at Webex colon space. So this is the keyword that the Webex calendar connector would recognize once it receives that invitation, So once it receives this invitation, what it's going to do is it's going to create a space, it's going to create a meeting, and then it's going to populate all the meeting information. Okay. And then let's figure out the date and time. I'm not going to say it's all day event. Let's say, so I'm going to say 2:45 p.m. until 3:15 p.m., half an hour. And I'm going to say, hello team, let's discuss about the return to office strategy. That's it. That's a normal meeting that you create. And then once you click on send, what's going to happen is your Webex room device is going to show you that join button before the meeting starts. And also you're going to see that a space is automatically created in Anita Perez Webex app, and also in Charles Holland's Webex app. And you're going to see the meeting information populating into the Charles Holland's Webex app. So let's go ahead and hit send. All right. So let's open now the Webex app from Charles Holland and see if it has created any space or not. Not yet. All right. So as you see, I am in Charles Holland's Webex app, and you see that the return to work strategy and planning space has automatically been created as soon as I sent that invitation to all the people. And if I click here, I should see in a short while the meeting details as well. So as you see here, I have the meeting details as well, and I can see the participants, who is the participant, and then I'll go back to Anita Perez and see if she has received it. And there you go. You see that Anita Perez has also received that space invitation, and she is now also a part of the return to work strategy and planning space. And there you go. She also sees the meeting information. And I'll go ahead and say accept on Anita Perez Webex app. And as you see here, the DX80 is still waiting for a response, because you will see a join button 5 minutes before the meeting starts. Okay. As you can see on my DX80, I can see the meeting, but the join button is still not created, and it says joinable from 2140. So actually it will allow you to join 5 minutes before the meeting starts. So just wait for it, and then we will see that the join button, the green join button, will appear automatically on this Webex room device. Okay, I'll just go ahead and accept the meeting from Anita Perez, and I'll say send the response now. All right. So as you see now, there is a join button appearing on Anita Perez's, Charles, Anita Perez's, this is Anita Perez's Webex app. So this one, and then let's go ahead and see what happens with the Webex room device. So in my case, Webex DX80. All right, so it's now time to join the meeting. Let's see how it looks like. So I'm joining from Anita Perez's system, and I'm using another camera to join in. So I'll say join meeting. So as you see here, Anita Perez is in the meeting. I'll go ahead and join from Charles' PC. I'll click on join. All right. Charles is also in the meeting now. I'm gonna mute Anita Perez. And then the Webex DX80. All right, so I'm now joining in from my room device. So that's my room device. And as you can see, there are 3 participants in the meeting now. So basically we have Charles Holland, Anita Perez, and the DX80 of Charles Holland, or just the Webex room device. Okay, Taylor Bart somehow was not able to join in, and then I'll say mute everyone because I'm the host. I can do mute everyone. All right, as you see, everyone has been muted. So we have successfully joined the meeting, and there you see. All right, so 2 cams and 3 people joining in the meeting. Okay, so I hope you guys have liked this video. If yes, give it a thumbs up. Maybe you have learned something new. Then share it with your colleagues. And what's the next thing that you would like to see on my channel? Please do let me know, and I'll make sure that I'll make a video out of it. All right, until then, thank you and stay safe. And yeah, stay trained. Bye.